Tonight on Reporting Scotland, Ian Packer is found guilty of murdering Emma Caldwell, along with physical and sexual violence against 21 other women. Emma's body was found in woods in South Lanarkshire 18 years ago. Her mother, Margaret, has never given up the fight for justice.
When they found Emma's body and they came and told me, I took this huge breath in, and now I feel as if I can let it out. I can breathe again.
Packer will now serve at least 36 years in prison. It was a BBC investigation that proved crucial in bringing him to justice.
You told me you'd never been to the place where Emma's body was found.
Absolutely.
You've been there many times, according to all the evidence that I've seen. The first woman you took to those woods was Emma.
No, it wasn't.
Did you kill Emma?
No, I never.
Tonight we hear from 4 former detectives involved in the inquiry who say the evidence was there all along. Also on tonight's programme, murder detectives continue their investigations into the shooting of a dog walker near Aberfeldy. Hello, I'm Laura Miller. Welcome to Wednesday's programme. It was one of the country's most high-profile unsolved murders. But tonight, after almost 2 decades, Emma Caldwell's killer is finally behind bars. Ian Packer will serve at least 36 years, found guilty of her murder and physical and sexual violence against 21 other women. In sentencing Packer, the judge paid tribute to Emma's mother, Margaret, saying her campaigning was living testament to her love for her daughter and the enormity of her loss. And today, the police apologised for how the original inquiry was handled. Our Home Affairs correspondent David Cowan reports.
The solving of this notorious murder will be overshadowed by damning revelations about the original police inquiry. It became a cold case after senior detectives chose to disregard evidence that Ian Packer had killed Emma Caldwell and attacked many other women.
Margaret believes that officers systematically sabotaged an investigation into Packer for a decade and have blood on their hands. For far too long, they have remained in the shadows but must now answer for their betrayal. The scale of the crimes and the failures are so catastrophic that nothing less than a judicial public inquiry will suffice.
For Emma's mother, her overwhelming feeling is one of relief.
Emotionally, I'm not on a high. I don't feel joyous. When they found Emma's body and they came and told me that they had found her body, I took this huge breath in, and now I feel as if I can let it out. I can breathe again.
Ian Packer received the longest sentence handed out in Scotland for a single murder. He'll be in his mid-80s before he can apply for parole.
Whether she had threatened to report you to the police or whether you killed her whilst acting out some evil fantasy, you murdered her in circumstances which must have been truly terrifying. Alone with the man who had already indecently assaulted her, in the dark, deprived of her phone and miles from any prospect of help.
18 years ago, Margaret Caldwell left flowers at the ditch in the woods where her daughter was found.
How could anyone do this? How could they?
Emma Caldwell was the 8th Glasgow sex worker to have died in suspicious circumstances in 14 years. The murder of only one, Margot Lafferty, had been solved. By 2007, detectives had identified Ian Packer as a sexually violent user of prostitutes who'd taken sex workers, including Emma, to the woods where her body was found. But a second parallel inquiry had focused on a Turkish cafe in Glasgow where sex workers had been abused. Emma Caldwell's blood was found inside on a quilt, and a Turkish man was the last to phone her on the night she disappeared. The inquiry, which centred on this cafe, led to 4 Turkish men being charged with Emma's murder in July 2007. But within months, the case had collapsed and the charges were dropped. The cafe's owner, Hussein Shalbanoglu, was later jailed for 10 years for raping other sex workers. As for Ian Packer, despite the evidence and allegations against him, he remained a free man. In 2015, the forgotten suspect was exposed by a newspaper and a BBC documentary. The Crown Office ordered a new police inquiry. In 2019, Ian Packer was confronted by a second BBC investigation.
Did you kill Emma?
No, I never. I could look you in the eye and say no, I had nothing to do with it whatsoever.
Another 3 years were to pass before he was charged. Many believe this should have happened years ago. This woman told the police in 2006 that Packer had raped her when she was 15.
Although he's been convicted now, he's had a lot of time to get away with it. He's been getting away with it for years. It's late, it's far too late for him to be charged. He should have been charged and maybe would have saved a lot of other victims suffering.
This former sex worker was attacked by Packer after he killed Emma Caldwell.
It's something if the police had listened back then a lot of stuff could have been prevented. I might have only been getting evidence about my friend being murdered. I might not have had to give evidence about stuff that happened to me. That's been difficult.
Margaret Caldwell's lawyer believes police failures allowed one of Britain's worst sex offenders to remain free. Are you prepared to keep going with it as well?
Yes, I'm prepared to keep going. I've gone this far, I'm going on. I just want the truth. I want the truth to come out.
The Crown Office says it's investigated allegations against officers involved in the original inquiry and concluded there's insufficient evidence of criminality, although that will be reviewed if new information comes to light. Today, the force which replaced Strathclyde Police made no attempt to gloss over the mistakes of the past.
We are exceptionally sorry. They were let down, as were many victims in 2005. We've completely changed our practices and processes, and we've learned from this, and we will continue to learn moving forward.
Her name has been synonymous with a brutal, unsolved murder and dangerous lives led by vulnerable women on Glasgow streets. Margaret Caldwell says she can now lay her to rest.
She'll always be in her thoughts, she'll always be there. She'll always be my Emma.
Well, a BBC disclosure investigation proved crucial in bringing Ian Packer to justice. Samantha Polling's interviews were played in court as evidence of his lying and evasion. Our investigations unit can now reveal that police had evidence of Packer's offending from as early as 2005. 4 former detectives involved in the inquiry have painted a picture of a botched and blinkered investigation that allowed a killer to walk free. Here is Sam's report.
For Ian Packer, this was the beginning of the end.
I need to get your consent for this interview on tape.
An interview he'd agreed to, which he would live to regret.
I don't believe you've been telling me the truth.
The truth was that Ian Packer was one of the country's most prolific sexual predators, a violent rapist and a killer. Emma Caldwell's killer. These former police officers who worked on the murder inquiry have broken their silence. The evidence against Packer, they say, was there all along, yet senior officers repeatedly dismissed him as a suspect, instead wrongly pursuing 4 Turkish men for the murder.
They couldn't lose face. If they were to turn around and say, we've made a mistake here, we've spent all this public money, their careers would have been finished and they knew that. So they bluffed it out.
We found numerous statements were given to police during the inquiry of rapes, sexual assaults and violent domestic abuse, all committed by Packer. And he was identified as the man who'd raped Emma in the months before she went missing. This detective asked for Packer to be made a suspect. He was told no.
There was identification there of more than one, not just him, the van, his behaviour. Several girls had picked him out of the photographs. He's admitting to more and more. So I phoned Wally Johnson, who was the senior investigating officer, and I said to him, I want to detain Ian Packer for the murder of Emma Caldwell. To which he replied, do not detain him. He is not our man. Release him.
It wouldn't be the only time. This detective was told to bring Packer in for another statement.
And I'm told at that point, but Davey, when you get Ian Packer and bring him in, it doesn't matter what he tells you. Doesn't matter what he tells you. he won't be an accused ever in this case.
Who tells you this?
The SIO, Willie Johnson.
It's during that statement that Packer finally admits to having taken women to remote woods for sex. They were the same remote woods where Emma's body would later be found naked and strangled. Packer then admits to having taken Emma there too.
I phone Willie Johnson, the boss, at home and give him the information that Ian Packer has had Emma Caldwell at the deposition site. He just relays what he told me previously. Davey, I told you at the start of the week he would never been accused.
Willie Johnston retired as a detective superintendent in 2014. He declined to provide a statement to the BBC. Emma's murder remained unsolved for 14 years. It wasn't until Ian Packer agreed to being interviewed by the BBC, interviews which would later be used against him in court as evidence of his lies, that he was finally confronted.
All the evidence that I've seen and everything that I have learned makes it clear that you are a sexually violent man.
Not a sexually violent man
who has
whatsoever.
raped women.
I've never raped any in my life.
You told me you'd never been to the place where Emma's body was found.
Absolutely.
You've been there many times, according to all the evidence that I've seen. The first woman you took to those woods was Emma.
No, it wasn't.
Did you kill Emma?
No, I never.
3 years after this interview was broadcast, the police finally charged Ian Packer with the murder of Emma Caldwell.
Take care of yourself, that's all.
We asked Police Scotland for a statement. They said this: Emma Caldwell, her family and many other victims were let down by policing in 2005. For that, we are sorry. A significant number of women and girls who showed remarkable courage to speak up at the time also did not get the justice and support they needed and deserved from Strathclyde Police.
There was loads of good people in that inquiry. Colleagues of mine who identified them early on in the inquiry. The mistakes were made elsewhere.
Mistakes which meant a violent killer was free to carry on raping and attacking women for another 15 years until he was finally caught. Samantha Poling, reporting Scotland.
And you can watch Sam's documentary, Catching a Killer, The Murder of Emma Caldwell, at 9 o'clock on BBC Scotland or on the iPlayer now. Well, let's return to our Home Affairs correspondent, David Cowan, who's followed this case throughout. And Dave, Emma's murder and her image will be seared into the memories of so many people in this country. Just how significant a day is this?
Well, this is the end of the second phase of one of the biggest police inquiries Scotland's ever seen. The investigation into the murder of Emma Caldwell and the attacks on all those other women actually analysed more pieces of information than the investigation into the Lockerbie bombing. And the case that was presented here at the High Court in 2024, was far stronger than the case that would have been presented had Ian Packer been prosecuted after the original inquiry. That's undoubtedly true. They had evidence from forensic science. They traced more victims. Some more victims had come forward after that disclosure documentary. But of course, some of those victims had been attacked after Ian Packer murdered Emma Caldwell, which takes us back to the central question tonight. Could this have happened long ago?
Yeah, so many questions remain about the original police investigation.
Yeah, the original police inquiry and had failures which must rank as some of the most serious failures in the history of Scottish policing. After the charges against those Turkish men didn't go anywhere, after that case collapsed, nothing was done about Ian Packer. Nothing was done about the evidence connecting him to the murder of Emma Caldwell. Nothing was done about the evidence connecting him to the attacks on the other women. The full headlights of that inquiry were never turned in his direction until the investigation was ordered to restart in 2015. The family are going to meet the head of the prosecution service, the Lord Advocate. They're hoping to go and meet the Chief Constable of Police Scotland and the First Minister to push for a full public inquiry. As for Ian Packer, I was watching him today when he was being sentenced. He remained utterly impassive throughout the whole thing. About the only thing he did was lean forward to take a drink of water when the judge was talking about the impact all this has had on Margaret Caldwell, and his hand wasn't even shaking. Tonight he's starting the second longest sentence ever handed out in Scotland.
Dave Cowan from the High Court in Glasgow, thank you. To other news now, and detectives are continuing a murder investigation into the shooting of a man near Aberfeldy. 65-year-old Brian Lowe was shot while walking his dog on the outskirts of the Perthshire town 11 days ago. Police are appealing to people in the small rural community to tell them if they saw anything out of the ordinary. Louise Cowie reports.
It's a picturesque part of Highland Perthshire that's been rocked by a mysterious murder. Forensics officers were this afternoon combing the remote rural track where Brian Lowe's body was found 11 days ago. The 65-year-old was walking his dog near Aberfeldy on the morning of Saturday the 17th of February when he was shot dead.
Mr. Lowe's death was initially believed to be medically related and therefore non-suspicious. But yesterday, police revealed that following the results of a post-mortem examination, Mr. Lowe's death was in fact being treated as murder.
Questions are now being raised about the timeline of events.
As I understand it, Mr. Lowe had been shot, and I would have thought those the implications of that would have been rather obvious. And then for the decision for this only to be made public about 10 days after the incident is an issue of concern, because I need to reassure my constituents in the Highland Perthshire area, and particularly around Aberfeldy, that they are in fact safe.
Mr. Lowe had worked as a groundsman at a local estate for 20 years. One former colleague who didn't want to be named described him as a gentleman and one of the most honest men you could meet. His murder has left the local community stunned.
We're known for being a very friendly town, so this is a kind of a shocking experience locally.
We were actually speaking about it last night, and it shocked quite a lot of us.
You don't expect anything like that to happen to you when you're out walking. But no, we are in disbelief.
Tonight, Police Scotland said they've carried out a number of lines of inquiry and are keeping an open mind as to the motive for Brian Lowe's murder. Louise Cowie, reporting Scotland near Aberfeldy.
To some of the day's other stories now. And a second man has been arrested and charged in connection with the murder of a 36-year-old man in North Ayrshire. Alan Lawson died in hospital on the 6th of February after being found seriously injured at his home in Saltcoats. A 27-year-old man is due to appear at Kilmarnock Sheriff Court today. A 29-year-old man was previously arrested and charged. The lead singer of Delamitri, Justin Curry, has revealed that he has Parkinson's disease. He was diagnosed 2 years ago, but decided to reveal the news in a BBC radio documentary about living with the condition. He says his medication is allowing him to continue being part of the band. Now, rape and serious sexual assault survivors here will be the first in the UK to get free access to transcripts from their court cases, which can normally cost several £1,000s. In a year-long pilot scheme, complainants can apply for transcripts if their case was heard at the High Court from 2007 onwards. Katrina Renton reports.
Hannah Stakes says that a man tried to rape her in 2018. Her case went to court. The jury reached a not-proven verdict. Hannah said she found the trial confusing and needed a copy of what had happened.
These trials, in whatever sense they cost the taxpayer or the system a huge amount of money anyway, but this information is recorded for a reason, right? So why should that be hard to access? Why should there be a price to justice, price to your own information? Why should there be barriers to access to that if someone wants it for a reason that's helpful to them?
Hannah raised the issue in the Scottish Parliament. Today, the Scottish Government are providing £100,000 to pilot a scheme, a first in the UK.
This pilot, I believe strongly, is an important step forward. This is about supporting victims and survivors in their own personal recovery. And I think once people see the benefits of the pilot, I've no doubt that others will follow where Scotland has led.
This is something survivors have been campaigning for years. One key reason is to understand exactly what happened at the trial.
For other survivors, it's so they can make a complaint, for example, about the defence lawyer's behaviour. In the case, it is very difficult to make a complaint without a transcript. And at the moment, you need to pay £4,000 to get hold of a transcript. That's an unacceptable barrier to justice.
This is the position Ellie Wilson found herself in. She crowdfunded to get the transcript of her rape trial, where her attacker was jailed for 5 years.
So I had a really awful time in court, and I was subjected to really humiliating conduct from the defence lawyer who cross-examined me. And after that, I felt like there needed to be accountability, so I lodged a complaint. And it was then that I found out I'd need to corroborate my complaint, and to do that, I needed my court transcript, which was going to cost over £3,000.
The pilot, starting on Friday, will last for a year. Complainers in sexual assault trials heard in the High Court are eligible, no matter what verdict was returned. Katrina Renton, reporting Scotland.
OK, let's get tonight's sport now with Lewis, and a night of football awaits.
Absolutely, a busy one, Laura, all over the country. Yeah, both ends of the table as well, a lot at stake, and as we've seen with the title race, it took some twists at the weekend, so big games for fans to get excited about. Thanks very much, Laura. Hello there, yes, it is another big night of Premiership action, and we're going to kick things off in the capital ahead of the clash between Hearts and Hibs. Our reporter Brian McLaughlin is at the game for us.
Good evening from Tynecastle Stadium, where we will have a capacity crowd for the third Edinburgh derby of the season. And if the previous two matches are anything to go by, then the fans here this evening are in for a real treat. It was a 2-2 draw here at Tynecastle back in October. The home side had led 2-0, but a double from Ellie Ewan secured a point for the Easter Road side. Then in Leith in December, it looked like it was going to be stalemate. Both sides had missed penalty kicks before Lauren Shanklin scored a wonder goal to secure victory for Hearts, who lead Hibernian by 21 points in the Scottish Premiership table, with Hibernian desperately needing a win to try and reach a top 6 spot for the season run-in. This one of 5 matches this evening, including down at Rugby Park. Rangers will be looking to cement their place at the top of the table against Kilmarnock, with Celtic also hosting Dundee this evening. All the action is live on Sports Sound on BBC Radio Scotland and BBC Sounds from just after 7, and you can watch the highlights of all the 5 matches this evening, and including last night's match in Dingwall between Ross County and St Mirren on Sports Scene from 10:40 tonight on BBC One Scotland.
Now let's get to last night's game. And VAR was once again in the spotlight as St Mirren boss Stephen Robinson felt they were denied a penalty in their draw with Ross County. The home side took the lead in Dingwall after a mistake from Alex Gogic allowed Jordan White to skip past Zach Hemming and slide the ball home for the lead. But then came the controversial moment. Ryan Leake handles in the box just before the break, but there was no intervention from the video assistant and Saints were denied a spot kick. In the end, though, they did find an equaliser, Toyosi Olasanya scoring late on to prevent County moving out of the relegation playoff spot.
Yeah, from what I'm being told, they didn't check it. So, look, there's no point in me crying about it. They're not going to change their mind. You know, we're enough of the ball when we didn't move it quick enough. We have a chance to win the game on our own without a wrong decision helping us or a right decision, to help us. So, look, I look at the things we can control. I can't control VAR.
I'm disappointed for them because I thought they defended extremely well throughout the game. And it just highlights how important it is to be switched on, for the whole game. We switch off for one moment and we get punished for it.
Finally to tennis, and Andy Murray has again hinted about his future, saying it's likely that he won't play past this summer, but he hopes to compete at the Olympic Games in Paris before he retires.
I'm likely not going to play past the summer. I get asked about it after every single match that I play, every single tournament that I play. And I'm bored of the question, to be honest.
Well, he's going to get asked that a fair bit.
He is. He's keeping us guessing, isn't he? OK,
Yes.
Thanks, Lewis.
Thanks, Laura.
OK, now let's go over to Stephen Jardine to find out what's happening on debate nights.
Debate Night is the only show in Scotland giving you the chance to put your questions to the people in charge. Tonight we're going to be in Dundee and answering the questions on our panel this evening. We have politicians, an award-winning author and an entrepreneur who turned down the dragons in the den not once but twice. That's debate night with me, 10:30 on the BBC Scotland channel and a little bit later on BBC One Scotland.
OK, let's get the weather with Chris. Is it spring yet?
Meteorologically on Friday.
Right.
We do need to talk about the S word, not spring, snow. Thank you very much indeed. Very good evening to you. It's been pretty cloudy around today. A few glimpses of brightness here and there. But actually, this evening and tonight, all our attention is on rain, all courtesy of this system here out in the Atlantic. You can see that great big area of cloud and its associated weather fronts. And it will be a pretty soggy picture through the next wee while, with that rain working its way north and eastwards across the country, accompanied by strengthening winds. As we approach the early hours, the heavy rain eases off. We're left with blustery showers and temperatures here in towns and cities around 3 to 6 Celsius. So to tomorrow, and we've got a lot of dry weather through central, southern and eastern Scotland, but fairly frequent showers through Argyll and across the Highlands and Islands, and these wintry across the highest ground earlier on, and then the snow level coming down to around 200 to 300 metres later in the day, so some higher road routes could see a bit of snow. Elsewhere, though, as I say, for much of central, southern and eastern Scotland tomorrow, it's bright with some sunshine, colder than today, windier than today as well, with the black arrows there indicating wind gusts. So gale to severe gale force winds through the Northern Isles, the North Coast and across the Hebrides as well. Into tomorrow evening, a brief ridge of high pressure, quietening things down for a time, because as we head through towards Friday, you can see we've got low pressure situated overhead and the blues there indicating a cold air mass, so unsettled and cold, and for some, that means snow. You can see on the chart here, central belt northwards, largely dry, few showers in the far north, and there's this weather front here, working in through Dumfries and Galway, South Lanarkshire and the borders. Some snow down to around 200 metres through the southern uplands to higher parts of roads like the M74. Could see a bit of snow through Friday afternoon. And then into Friday evening, here's where it gets interesting. It starts to work its way northwards. Now, through the central belt, we're expecting it to be rain, but to the north and south of here, on the higher ground, could well be wintry. Certainly one to watch. And this weekend, well, it's staying chilly. It might be meteorological spring, but won't feel particularly spring-like at all. That's the forecast for now, Laura.
Thank you, Chris. And that is Reporting Scotland. Graham Stewart will have your late news at 10:30 tonight. Until then, from everyone here, enjoy your evening. Good night.